all, I just love skiing, like so much. There's nothing in the world that brings me more joy ever.
Scared to death right now, but I've got this. Like, I know deep down inside I'm capable of what I'm about to do.
I felt like the rehab was pretty simple and straightforward, and I learned how to appreciate my body and how to take care of it, what to eat and like to stretch. I was 18, so I felt like I was invincible at the time.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the Athletic Stance Podcast, a skier's perspective with your host, yours truly, Scott Chrisman. In this podcast, I have made it my job to go out and interview skiers at the highest level of the sport, to explore their perspective on life, what shaped and influenced them to become the person they are, and a whole lot more. First, let's take a look at our sponsors, because without them, none of this is possible. Our first sponsor is Northwest Tech. If you haven't heard of them yet, you're missing out. They hand make customizable 3-layer outerwear to order in the Pacific Northwest. And that means you know that it keeps you warm, dry, and looking unique while you're sending it around the mountain. They've been generous enough to give me a coupon code for my listeners. Use the code AOS75 to get $75 off any custom piece of outerwear. Their site is in the show notes. This episode is brought to you by POC. POC makes the best helmets, goggles, and protective wear out there. They've been dedicated to protecting athletes since day one, and I wouldn't wear a different helmet, goggle, back pad, or hip pads. With their spin technology and VPD system, there are no other products on the market that are like it. Definitely go and check out POCsports.com and protect yourself today.
What is up, Athletic Stance listeners? Welcome back to Season 2 of the podcast. I apologize that it's taken me so long to put out more episodes, but finally they are back. To start out, I am going to run the first couple episodes adless. I'll be advertising a couple brands that I really stand behind that are doing awesome things in the ski industry here in a couple episodes. But starting out, we're going to go adless, and I just want to jump right in and introduce guest number 1 for episode number 1 of season 2. He is the Chinese halfpipe strength and fitness coach, and I originally was going to put these episodes out in the preseason, and it just one thing led to another, and I got behind on the podcast. So here we are in February, and I'm putting out episode 1 of season 2. Without further ado, Mr. Strength Coach Kenny, I don't even know his last name, but this is an amazing conversation. We talk about strength and fitness and mindset and visualization and what to do to prepare for competition, for pulling new tricks, and just the overall physiology of skiing. So I hope you guys enjoy season 2, episode 1 with Strength Coach Kev.
So about me, well, let's see, this October, I just finished 9 years of being a strength and conditioning coach. I grew up playing soccer, baseball, and football pretty much my whole life. I was kind of the kid with glasses who, sports was the way that I fit in. So I was not the most athletic or talented kid ever, but I was going to be that kid that was just going to hustle and going to be the annoying guy that was just going to try and beat you to death and not go away. So it's high school. I played baseball and football. My football team, I think our record was like 46-2. We were really, really good. My senior year, we went to the California State Championships. We actually played Mark Sanchez's team. So my one claim to fame is I tackled Mark Sanchez in high school. I was really hoping he would win a Super Bowl that one year so I could say I tackled the Super Bowl MVP, but they didn't. So, and then I went to school at Arizona State. I actually started out as a math major, and I found out I didn't really want to do math anymore. I always really liked it. Then I was an architecture major, and I found out I sucked at building models. My professor the first semester was like, "No, I'm really looking forward to your next project." So I was like, all right, I quit this. I switched to kinesiology. In my first class, we were kicking soccer balls across the field, measuring how far they went and seeing how high, they were in the air and how long. I was like, cool, we get to be outside. I like this. I had decided early on in college that I didn't want to actually have a real job or work at a desk. I needed to be, outside and doing things. So got my degree in kinesiology and been coaching for 9 years, strength and conditioning. I started working for a company called Velocity Sports Performance, and they back in the day were really big at getting guys to go to the combine. So I got to work with a couple NFL combine classes, which was awesome. The one thing I will say that I never really did as a coach is I never really specialized in any one sport. I've worked with, you pick a sport, I've probably worked with, one of those athletes. I've worked with football, baseball, hockey, soccer, and at all levels, even all the way up to the Olympics. Worked with some beach volleyball guys. I worked out in Redondo the past 5 years, Redondo Beach in California. So it's a big beach volleyball scene out there. So I've worked with a lot of high level beach volleyball guys. And then now currently the past 4 months I've been working for Team China, doing ski halfpipe for them as they call it a fitness coach, but I'm kind of just more than that because it's 9 athletes that are 14 to 18-year-olds. They're a bunch of little babies. So yeah. I've been coaching for 9 years, strength and conditioning.
Yeah, no, that sounds awesome. How did you get into the ski world after being in the sports world and, from beach volleyball and working with people who went to the NFL Combine? How did you end up being, a lifestyle and fitness coach for Team China? How did that all evolve?
The company that I work for, Velocity Sports Performance, my boss has been doing contracts with the Chinese Olympic Committee for, I think it's like 6 or 8 years now. So we've worked with 32 different Chinese Olympic sports. And then this is the first time he got the contract through the 2022 Olympics in Beijing for the ski halfpipe. So this is the first winter contract that we had. And I was, really the best guy for the job. And we don't really look at, necessarily sport specific in the line of work we do. We just treat athletes as a human first, and then we can build from there, from those layers. And I think, especially when you look at, sports like skiing, the more background and experience you have in all these other disciplines, it helps carry over, because what I've learned about skiing is, it's just like you still have to be an athlete and a human being first. And so that's how I got hooked up with that. And it's really tough because, we're traveling most of the time. And so you don't know what your gym situation is going to be like. So you really have to be very, very adaptable, and having, 9 years of experience going into that is really kind of what's helped me be successful at this. The other thing that's helpful too is our athletes are, 13 to 17, 18 years old. My experience is helping athletes, in that specific age range from, junior high to high school, kind of So it's still working with kids. They're relatively new to training in general. So it's not going to be the most technical or super sexy program. We're really just going to focus on the basics. And even with some of the higher level guys, the basics is going to take you a really long way. The guys who do the basics the best and the fundamentals the best are usually the best. They're the best at doing those really sexy next level type things.
Yeah, totally. Growing up ski racing, we always went back to the fundamentals first of the year. Always. We were doing drills. We were trying to figure out feeling the skis underneath our feet and everything in that realm. And it comes down to mastering those fundamentals and being conditioned. We talk about conditioning. Mm-hmm. Conditioning is really just being able to do something over and over and over and kind of create that flow state or that subconscious conditioning to be able to execute and have it, have your posture be right even when you're not thinking about it, and have your core engaged even when you're not thinking about it, and being able to just like when you sit down with good posture and stuff like that. It does come down strictly to fundamentals, and those fundamentals are shared across all levels of sports. It doesn't matter who you are. You need to anatomically be able to use your body. And if you can use your body well, then that foundation will allow you. That's why you can see someone like Jeremy Bloom go from moguls to, the NFL Combine and not really skip a beat.
Yeah. And, using your body and working on those basics, the best in the world are the best at, like I said, they're the best at the basics, but the people who do it the longest and, across multiple disciplines, they find a way to make those boring fundamentals like fun. So they can do it for, a really, really long time. Because if you're not having fun, doing just those fundamental things, the things you need to do to get your body, like you said, in the right position over and over again under different conditions, that's really what it comes down to. And if you're not having fun doing that, and most people will want to skip over the basic things, but that's really what it is. You got to do the basics better than anybody else. And that's why those people make the really complex things look so easy, because they do the simple things so much better than anybody else.
Yeah, totally. And as a reflection on that, it's fun. The most fun you can have, I think, in sports as an athlete is when you're fully in control of your body, of what's happening around you. And, you can't, when you show up to a half pipe event, when you show up to a slopestyle event, when you show up to a ski race, you can't control anything outside of you. You can't control the wind, the temperature, the weather, the snow conditions, anything, the way the course is set, the way the half pipe is dragoned, it's shaved, and the way that, the jumps are groomed, however it is, but you can control yourself. And I think that's where physiologically, you talk about the mind-body connection, when you kind of can release control or release the idea of controlling anything externally, and you just focus on controlling yourself over and over and over, then you gain power over the external situation in every time, in every situation you're placed in.
Absolutely. And that's true for every sports. In football, you can't control the ref, you can't control the wind, you can't control even your own teammates. So you can really only focus on, controlling yourself. And that's what training is learning how to gain control of your body and those external factors. And the more you do it, the better you get at it. That's, training to stress. Yes, our form of stress is in a barbell or a kettlebell or an exercise, but it's the same thing with skiing. You have all these external factors. How do you deal with that inside and kind of overcome these challenges, which is really kind of how I define strength. Strength is not, just this physical thing. It's our capacity to overcome an obstacle or a challenge.
Yeah, totally. I have a friend who is a Navy SEAL, and when he showed up to start training, all the officers, I'm going to use poor terminology here, hopefully no one hates me, but all the officers laughed because he was 130 pounds and just small, but he had the mindset and the internal strength to overcome all the obstacles that were placed in his way. And now he's served multiple tours and from the most unlikely candidate to one of the most thriving Navy SEALs out there, it all comes from strength, and it's totally, it's that capacity to overcome the obstacle. And sometimes that takes more intelligence than it does physical strength, and sometimes it takes more brute physical strength than it does intelligence. But finding that, like, the situations where you can rely on your intelligence, rely on your physical strength, rely on your teammates, rely on your equipment, and when you just constantly need to, like, all of it is constantly relying on yourself. And that's where, the fundamentals, when you get conditioned to have the fundamentals as your fallback, as your foundation, then you ultimately, like, you stand on an unbreakable foundation, an unbreakable rock,
Yeah, I think those Navy SEAL guys are incredible, because you're right there. Some of them are like these tiny guys, but what people don't actually understand about the body is so durable. I mean, skiers who've wrecked their lives and they're still able to do things. When you go through something like boot camp, you're going through like multiple days of like very little to no sleep, of physical exertion that shouldn't be possible on the body, but the body is so good at doing whatever you tell it to do. It's the mind that fails you all the time. Once your mind goes and you start going to the negative place and have those negative thoughts, that's when your body starts to fail you, because your mind has mentally given up. So, learning from Navy SEALs on how to just, stay in it mentally is I suggest something everybody should do. And they do a lot if you ever, a guy named Mark Devine, he does a lot of training in Navy SEALs. He talks a lot about breath work, because all that happens is when you're not breathing, your mind goes into this crazy state mode. If you can get control of your state by using your breath and calm yourself back down and get out of that panic state, you're going to be a lot safer, a lot faster. Because when you panic, you make stupid decisions. I'm sure it's the same when you're skiing. If you're, breathing hard, all of a sudden you're doing something you weren't ready to do. Whereas if you take a second, take a couple breaths, get control of your state, the outcome's going to be much more in your favor.
Yeah, totally. And like when you're in it's that fight or flight state of mind, that reptile brain, living in the brainstem, versus letting your frontal cortex make discernments about the situation, and being, like when you're living more in your frontal cortex, you have the ability to have a lot more power, and a lot of that has to do with physiologically resetting it. And do you guys do any work with reflexology at all?
I have personally. I think I've done some reflexology work. I haven't done that with any of our athletes currently. But I mean, I think some of that stuff is really, really good. Anything you can kind of trick the body. It doesn't matter how you do it, but if you can trick the body to get it to do what you want it to, call it guru, call it whatever you want. I don't think it matters. You got the result that you were looking for. Anything works. Whatever works for each individual is fair game, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And everybody's different. Everyone has to understand, like, what someone does might not be good enough for someone else. Everybody is different. And I'm not going to knock one thing over another, because, hey, that works for that guy. That's fine.
Yeah, totally. It's pretty crazy how breath seems to have become a reoccurring theme in the podcast, having interviewed so many top level athletes at this point and talking to them about fear and overcoming fear. Like, one of the baseline fundamentals that they're consistently working on is breath. And one of the crazy things about breath is it is really the only bridge between the nervous system. So it's the one thing that you can either control or let your body take care of. You don't get to control, unless you're a monk, you don't get to control your heart beating. And you do that through breath, but you don't get to choose, okay, my heart's going to beat now and it's not going to beat, and you don't get to choose whether your stomach breaks down a food and takes the amino acids and enzymes and distributes it to the muscles in the right way. Like, you get to choose what you put in your body and how that all orchestrates. We've talked about the ketogenic diet before on the podcast, and we've talked about intermittent fasting, and there's ways to get your body to physiologically have an advantage, but one of the very, very base level things is breath. It's amazing how much you can. It's a way for you to intrinsically understand that you have control over yourself. And when you don't have control over your breath, you don't have control over yourself. So, yeah.
Yeah, we say using your breath, it controls your neurology, and your neurology kind of, the motor units that control everything. And if you can control that, you can really change any part of your body that you want. If you've ever heard of, Wim Hof, the guy has complete control over his immune system because that's all neurological, and he controls that with his breath. And he's done it for so long that he's injected toxins into himself, and he's told his neurology to, hey, let's get rid of these things, because he has that complete control over his state by just using his breath and controlling his physiology with his breath. And it's absolutely crazy. And breath has been one of the biggest things to come around. Like you said, monks have been doing it for tens of thousands of years, and we're finally thinking, hey, this might actually work. The same thing with yoga. It's putting yourself in different poses, and can you control and own these poses? And you can't if you can't breathe. If you can't breathe, you don't own that position.
Yeah, totally. And like at a physiological level, like oxidative stress is the cause of almost all disease. It allows for inflammation to happen. Inflammation, causes all sorts of things in the body. And really at the end of the day, if you can have your blood be oxygenated, your brain be oxygenated, your muscles be oxygenated, then you're giving it the resources to be able to have that baseline fundamental superpower is really what it is. And it's crazy, like almost like 70% of diseases or illnesses are corrected by the body if you allow it to. And if you can figure out in Western medicine, we often address symptoms over causes. And when you mask a symptom, then you let that cause run rampant while you shut off a section of the brain instead of going to the root cause. And oftentimes the root cause can be solved just by breath, water, and the right food.
Yep.
Yeah.
People, they always want to treat the symptom, like you said, instead of looking for that root cause. And so we dull those, these symptoms that are manifesting in our body are our body saying, hey, something's wrong. And so we just say, no, you're wrong, body, by, dulling it with, usually it's like painkillers or things like that, or, poor diet, or it's just stress. Stress is stress, and how our body manages stress, it determines, how well we adapt. And if we're not dealing with that stress, we're not going to adapt the way that we want.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. It's definitely, like stress, oxidative stress, all of that. It shows up for a reason. And oftentimes we don't want to accept the reality of the situations that we're in. It seems scary. And I think that we're kind of educated into a system where like we don't have control is what we're told. And, we do have so much control. And just because something, I think another huge theme of the people that I've interviewed on the podcast is that a lot of the people, they have endured lots of failures, quote unquote failures, or lots of mistakes. And instead of representing it in their head as if it's this terrible, awful, like end of the world situation, they're like, okay, well, I did this, it led to this, and if I would have changed my decision right here, it would have led to a better outcome. And so you turn that around and those failures and mistakes into learning lessons, and then you condition your brain to look for the silver lining or the better opportunity. Or I broke my back 2.5 years ago, tore my ACL a year and a half ago, broke my tibia this last 6 months ago. And through all of it, I just continued to say, okay, how can I become grateful for this? and figured out the way to find the gratitude in the situation, the lesson to be learned. And, now I'm taking a big break from pursuing professional skiing and pushing my reach out more and more, and being able to take that instance of gratitude and saying, hey, maybe I can turn this into something that actually empowers me to become better instead of takes me down, has been one of the most powerful things that I've ever experienced in my life.
Yeah, those failures, I don't like saying this a lot because people are like, oh, you're messed up. But sometimes it's really beneficial when athletes get injured. Because they have to learn from that. I tell my athletes, one of the things I quote myself a lot is fail fast and fail often. The more you're learning from your mistakes, the further you're going to move on from that. And what happens is people live in this ego state of like, oh, I failed, I'm not good. Where it's like, okay, why did I fail? How can I improve so that I don't make that mistake a second time, a third time, a fourth time? Those really good athletes, they make those adjustments within seconds most of the time, especially with skiing, like from run to run, like, hey, we're talking about very, very small, tiny fractions of a second, fractions of, an inch here and there. And that can lead to, winning a gold medal and, ending up in the hospital.
100%. I mean, look at, I interviewed David Wise last fall, and his comeback in the Olympics this year was just unbelievable, having 2 equipment failures. If he didn't have that ironclad mindset and that ability to, just kind of shake off, okay, like my binding, didn't work the way that it was supposed to. And, it totally is, especially when you're trying to catch the wall high up to get your pump, to get to the next wall, to, to set your trick. It's a matter of, even probably like centimeters and millimeters when you're setting your trick, and then, finding the grab. And when you're finding the grab, the judges everyone is so good these days that the difference between 2 inches off your tail versus full tail is the difference between medals. And it's, I think one of the things that you said, like, I love the fail fast and fail often. It's one of those situations where if obviously you need to look for the lessons in failure, and you need to look for the lessons. Like if you're just out there running amok, you're going to get slapped by the universe over and over. But if one of the things that I was going to say is that you often repeat the lesson until you learn from it.
Until you actually learn it. Yep.
And that goes for relationships. It goes for, whatever it is. Until you actually get to learn the lesson, you oftentimes you get hurt. And a lot of the times we want to say, oh, this happened to me. This happened to me. It happened to me. And if you can flip that mindset around and say, oh, this happened for me, what am I supposed to learn? Like, why did this happen for me? What's the thing that's supposed to end up benefiting me? And it's those subtle shifts in mindset. The universe works in, basically 3 essential polarities: positive, negative, and neutral. And oftentimes we trend towards something hurts us, the brain interprets it as negative, and then we have a negative reaction to it.
Yep.
But if you can have a neutral reaction to it and then look for the positive, like it's hard to have a positive reaction to I just broke my leg. That's tough, and like you never want to run from the emotions. You want to process them, because at the end of the day, we all feel emotions for a reason, and those emotions can end up being anchor points to give us more power. If you have sadness, I cried when I broke my tibia this year, because I've been working super hard for 2 years, mastering my fitness, mastering my physiology.
It wasn't because of the pain. Yeah, for sure. It wasn't because of the pain.
Not at all. I didn't care.
Well, maybe the emotional pain is really what it comes down to.
Exactly. And then being able to anchor that to ways to become more powerful, and kind of looking at it and being like, okay, well, maybe I can have a bigger reach with my athletic career right now. And since then, there's been a lot of really powerful experiences that I've had, and a lot of amazing connections I've been able to make because I didn't wallow in my own pain. And I didn't allow it to take me down. I felt the emotion long enough to metabolize it. I use that word of like metabolizing emotion, because at the end of the day, you need to let it input, be digested through, and then have its output, instead of like, not looking at it, being like, oh, that's not there, I'm not going to look at it. And that's a similar mindset to that whole Western medicine of like, I'm going to dumb down the pain or the symptom versus going to the root cause. And it's really, we all have a responsibility for ourselves. And a lot of us struggle when we look at the external world. You make one small decision. I think we get off track very slowly. You make one small decision that's like not quite in alignment with what you want. And then the next time you're presented in that situation, you're like, oh, well, I guess I can make another small decision. That's not what I want. And then another small one. And it takes radical self-realization to bring you back on track, and radical self-ownership to bring you back on track, to say, okay, I got myself into this situation. Even if it was a totally unknown, if you were unconsciously unaware of the situation that led you there, then you're brought to awareness, and then you need to discover what is going to consciously allow you more of more understanding. And it's hard, because in these sports, the extreme sports, it is, life or death situations. So you got to tread very lightly in it. And it's,
I think one of the most important things you said in there is emotion. And so when I work with athletes, one of the things our company really works on is, what's your why? What's your reason for training? And now a lot of times it's, very superficial. Oh, I want to be faster. Oh, I want to win a gold medal. Or, oh, I want to compete at the highest level. So what I do with my athletes is I have to keep asking why. Say there's like a rule of, you have to ask at least 5 whys. You have to keep going. And eventually, if you keep asking why, you're going to get to a reason for a lot of people that's really emotional. And that's actually your why. You have to really, like you said, you have to find that emotional piece to it. You have to have that emotional connection to it. Otherwise, you're not going to keep doing those things that you need to do. So it's good to have, a coach or someone else there with you that's going to help you, answer all of these questions. Like you said, work through that emotion, find, oh, this is my reason why I do things. That way, now you know what your motivation is. Your coach knows what your motivation is. In those days that you don't really want to be there, they can help motivate you through that. But if you don't really do the work to find the connection to that emotional piece of why you're doing what you're doing, then even when you do win that gold medal, if you don't have a reason other than, oh, I just wanted to win a gold medal, it's not going to mean anything to you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, totally. There's not going to be any sort, like, you'll be on top of the podium and be like, well, this is nice. Like,
yeah, thanks, guys. But you'll feel, empty, because you don't have that emotional connection for, it's what you're doing all the time.
Yeah. And one of the big things that I've focused on, I get to turn around, do some public speaking for my old ski team. And one of the huge things that I realized when I broke my back is everything I was doing was for external validation. I wanted people to look at me and think that I was cool for whatever reason. I wanted people to be like,
I wanted to feed that ego.
100%. And it'll only get you so far. But, one of the things that I'm going to talk about with the ski team is internal validation, and knowing that, like, you can show up, and if you're, this whole conversation is perfect as just a reminder that everything that I want to talk about is, I think, in line with a lot of the things that you're talking about with these younger athletes that are on the national team, is like, the more that you can define why you're there. If one person wants to be there to be the fastest, that's cool. And that, like, if they can define their why as wanting to be one of the best in the world, then identifying it, But, on the slightly more recreational teams, even though it's still very competitive, the teams that I'm working with, some of them, very much have the potential of going to the Olympics or going on to become these really successful athletes, is if one person is there to have fun and just to enjoy nature and just to be there, to show up, to spend time, even if it's like, I want to be a part of the ski team because I don't want to be in school in the afternoon, identifying those whys and not letting anyone else judge it, but have the one person that wants to have fun understand that that's why they're there, and everyone else understand that. And then you have the person who wants to be the best in the world and articulate that. Everyone gets to understand that. Then the person that's there to have fun can support the one that wants to be the best. And the one that wants to be the best can support the one that wants to have fun. And they can share in a collaborative vision for each other's, mission and vision, instead of having like these battles of like, well, I want this and you want that, so we're different. So, there's dissension or dissonance. And I think that it's really important. That's got to be crazy being out in China.
China is definitely another world. It's I tell people it's definitely a contradiction. So, in leading up to the, Olympics, because they have the home Olympics, obviously they want to do really good. They've, invested a ton of money. I think 2 years ago, they said they wanted to, over the next 10 years, build 300 ski fields in China. And now the biggest thing leading up to the Olympics, that's why they've hired a bunch of foreign coaches to help them get there, is they don't even have enough people to ski these events to to get to not just the athletes, but just the support staff of like the medics, and they don't know how to ski. So they're in a big rush to try and just get a ton of people able to ski so they can have enough people to man these events.
That's crazy.
And they love doing all this, they're China. They've been around the longest. They know everything. However, they bring these people on because they know they need help, but then they don't necessarily take our advice or want to listen, which is it's frustrating. But our team is a little bit different, where I think our team leader is a little bit more open to change, and she's like, this is why we brought you here, so we want to do things the way that you want to do it. But there's still a lot of like some of the lower level or assistant coaches that are really, really hesitant to that change. So that's really one of the biggest struggles, is just we're trying to change an entire culture, not just teach people how to ski. It's it's the whole lifestyle package, and they live differently than we do, for sure.
Yeah definitely. Where did I drop off?
I don't remember. It was more we were talking about kind of the kids you were chatting with, the ski team that you're, the one kid's having fun, the one kid wants to go to the Olympics, and I think that's teaching people how to be on a team is going to help everybody reach their highest level. Only one person can win the Olympics, but it's a team of people behind the scenes that help them get there. It's not just that one person, solely like sticking a stake in the ground. This is me and only me. No, there was people pushing them from behind. There were coaches. There was, doctors, support staff. There's everything, and they all have to know the reason why they're there and to be a part of something bigger. And once everyone's individual reason for being there, that's really what allows teams to really want to be a part of something bigger, and everyone knows kind of their role. And on a team, that's how you take it to the highest levels. Everybody is on, hey, we've got this mission, but there's all these different parts that need to get done. And I like doing this part. I like doing this part. This is what I want out of it. And when everybody really understands and knows their role, that's when you can really take things to the next level.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's just all performing teams and companies and, businesses. It's not just limited to the world of sports.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it reminds me of like a football team. Like someone might be there because they want, like let's say someone's father passed away, and like they find this massive emotional anchor in wanting to win a Super Bowl or win a game because of that emotional anchor towards their father. And someone else might be there because they want to display for the future generations the capability of like physiology and of, you know, of an individual. And when you, like, one of the most beautiful things about the world is you can't be good at everything, but you can be good at one thing. And when you are good at one thing and someone else, you have a strength that makes up for someone else's weakness. That's what creates this amazing culture, community, connections. And at the end of the day, like, if you don't exist, I don't matter, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
And
absolutely. Everybody has a superpower. Once you learn to embrace your individual superpower instead of saying, like, oh man, well, my superpower is, you know, laser vision, but man, I really want to fly. Like, you're not living your true self. And so you have to find someone else who can fly instead, and then you be their vision, because they can't see. And if if you want to fly but you can't see, those two things really kind of go hand in hand, and everybody has to be a part of that same mission in order for those great things, you know, to happen.
totally. I love that analogy. Love that analogy. So what are some of the fundamentals that you encourage athletes to, like all athletes across the board, what are some of the fundamentals that you focus on that you would say are some of the most important in allowing athletes to become their best selves? You know, we talked about breath, we've talked about emotional mastery, but just on a physical level, physiology and all that, what's your...
I think that athletes should, you know, train. If you want to be good in a sport, you need to train your body and not for your sport. I'm new to the skiing world, but from what I can see, and this is true of just all sports, is people want to be so specific and just only do sport-specific things. That's going to limit you, and that's going to burn you out, and that's going to lead to a higher risk of injury. You know, my favorite example is baseball. Baseball used to just be, hey, I play baseball, you know, 152 games a year, and that was it. And then I did that. Well, kids are now playing baseball all year round, and we're wondering why all of these kids are blowing their arms out. I can tell you exactly why. They're not recovering. They're not doing other things that they need to be due to, you know, enhance that. And so one of the things I tell, especially for younger athletes, is don't specialize too early. You have plenty of time to specialize in that sport. When someone's going to pay you or give you a scholarship for that particular sport, that's when you can start to decide to finally specialize. And even then, like, take time away from what you're doing to let your body heal and recover. I think we overemphasize doing more when the body, it needs time to heal and recover. So one of the biggest things that actually I do with our company is we focus on recovery. You know, with the breathing, there's Normatex, there's, you know, cryotherapy, there's foot pods, taking care of the body. Because I think we talked about this earlier. The body is really, really good at adapting and healing. You just have to let it. And if you're always bombarding with the same stress over and over again, guess what? Something's going to break. And it's going to be eventually, even, you know, mentally, emotionally, physically, whatever it is. So the best thing I can say for athletes is try and be as well-rounded as you can for as long as you can, and have the most amount of experience. The most amount of experience you have to draw from, the better off you're going to be in those high-pressure, high-tense situations. And I'm a little biased, so I want athletes to have an incredible amount of strength. You know, we talked about strength earlier. It's, you know, your capacity to overcome challenges. And I like teaching kids to weightlift. I like teaching kids to get strong, because when you have more capacity, more strength, even if you're not efficient at what you're doing, you're less likely to break. So teaching kids to have some strength. Also, what's cool about strength for kids is, at least for me, the first time I picked up, you know, a significant amount of weight on a deadlift and then the bar hit the ground and the floor shook, you're like, whoa, that was cool. I did that. And what's nice about that is in sports, you always want feedback. So with, you know, weightlifting in general, when you just start, you're piling weight on. You're like, wow, I'm getting strong really fast. So you have that positive feedback right away, and you're like, man, this is cool. And then all of a sudden you go out to, you know, the ski field or whatever, and you're like, wow, I'm able to do 3 or 4 more runs than I was before. That's going to help you gain more skills there, because instead of being tired and having to call it early, you're able to get 3 or 4 more runs in, where you're now getting more practice of the thing you're good at. So having a good capacity of strength and just training in general, increasing your training age is the best thing you can do, because you now understand how to use your body more. You have more capacity. You can stay out there longer. You're less likely to get injured. You know, especially with skiing, you fall from significant heights. Like, injuries happen. That's just the nature of the beast. But if you have more strength to, pull that landing out or, whatever it is, you're going to live to fight another day. So I tell that to athletes all the time is focus more on just training your body and more than just what you're doing, because it's going to have you have a much longer career, and you're going to enjoy it a lot more, because if you do the same thing over and over again, everybody gets bored. Like, that's why you see a lot of the Olympians now, hey, I'm taking a year off of skiing. Oh, that's crazy. No, it's not. It's not crazy at all. They're giving themselves the mental space and the physical space to heal from, 4 years of banging on their body as hard as they could for this thing they wanted. And they realize, man, if I'm going to do this for much longer, I need to find something that I actually enjoy, or find the reason why I enjoy skiing again, or whatever their particular sport is. Because like we talked about earlier, if it's not fun, you're not going to want to put in all the work that's required to get to the next level.
Yeah.
So I would just try and be as well-rounded as you can. And you mentioned David Weiser. I actually got to meet David when I was up in Oregon a couple months ago, and I follow him on Instagram. And now what's he doing? He's learning to backflip on a bike. Like, he's not focused on skiing. He's doing all these other things and being very well-rounded, which all of these, body awareness things and just putting more, wear and tear on the body, but in a different way, so that when he finally decides to, strap the skis back on, he hasn't skied in a while. So he's not having these overuse injuries from skiing, which, let me tell you, skiing is a nasty, nasty sport. You're putting your body in positions and at high speeds and asking it to make decisions really, really quickly. It's a tough sport. And not to mention, some of these positions you're putting in are just anatomically not good for the body. And so the chance of risk of injury in these overuse injuries is huge. And then, just the mental fatigue part of it. If you're not mentally in the right place, your body's not going to make the decisions fast enough that it needs to. It's going to be sluggish. It's going to be slow. So you want to be as mentally fresh as possible. And so taking time away from things is really, really good. And then it kind of makes you miss that thing, right? It's why Christmas is only once a year. If Christmas was every day, it wouldn't be fun.
Right? There'd be no point for it. I love that. Yeah, it definitely, the same goes. Like, I've delved into the entrepreneurial journey super hard in the last 6 months. And like, the days that I'm on the computer for 12 hours, by the last 4 hours, it's like, why am I even sitting here? Like, I should go out. I should spend time outside. I should walk my dogs. I should have some fun with them. I should, and then come back. And when I do come back, I'm going to nail out that thing that was going to take me 2 hours and 30 minutes, because I'm actually, I'm going to enjoy it. And when you're having fun doing stuff, it allows you a lot better of a flow state. You let your subconscious innate ability, all of the conditioning that you've already interpreted, all of the education that you've already interpreted, allow it to do its thing, instead of trying to control it and muscle it around. And it's like in martial arts, if you just try and be a brick wall, you're going to get your butt kicked. But if you work with the flow, if someone comes at you and you use their energy and then you push it back, there's this whole, it's that whole yin yang, the whole, being able to understand that everything has its place. And if you allow it to have its place, then you have the full circle, and the full circle is so much more powerful than just the light or the darkness.
Yeah. So every session I coach, and this is kind of for really anything, I tell people, you're trying to find that flow state. So every session I coach, I'm trying to accomplish 3 things, and it's usually in this order, but number 1 is usually always the same. It's number 1, you want to have fun. If you're not having fun, like we've talked about, you're not going to want to do it. Number 2, you need to learn something about yourself. Whatever you're doing, you have to have kind of that feedback loop. And the last one, you need to work hard. You need to challenge yourself. And if you can accomplish those 3 things every session, you're going to be putting in a progressive amount of work that's constantly better. And you mentioned flow states. You don't get into flow states if what you're doing is easier than what you can do. I think if you read The Rise of Superman, I think it's like 4%. You want to challenge yourself by 4% greater than your current ability level. Anything more than that is too difficult. You're not going to want to do it. Anything less than that, it's not challenging enough, you're going to get bored. So you have to find that fine line of what's going to always constantly push you to be a little bit better by just enough. And that's why, I tell athletes, go find someone that's about your level or maybe a little bit higher. Go train with older athletes and help that. They're going to bring you up to that next level. And we're talking about some advice for, younger athletes or just athletes in general is get a coach. you're a skier by trade, you know everything about skiing, but if you're going to go and be, you want to learn more about training, yeah, sure, you can go and Google it, but you're only going to still do the things that you like. You're like, oh, bicep curls, I'm going to go and do that. When it's like, as a coach, as coaches say, yeah, that's great. I'm just saying, you want to look good up on the podium there, but you need to do the things that are actually going to get you there. And we lie to ourselves. We always want to do the things that we want to do because it's fun. But when push comes to shove, there are things that we need to do that aren't going to be fun. And we need a coach who can recognize those things for us. Someone who, is good at programming and saying, here's the things that you say you need. Here's what the things that I think you need. And you have a good combination and blend of those. And having someone, a coach, just with any sport, in business, you need someone to help take it to the next level who can see our own flaws because we think we're perfect.
Yeah, totally. And being open to having criticism, being having,
coachable. Yeah,
exactly. And, being welcoming the fact that like, you might have the ways that you like to do things. They might have the way that they like to do things. And there's a perfect intersection where your strengths and weaknesses are made up by their strengths and weaknesses. And yeah, it's having a coach, even in the entrepreneurial venture, is super important. Being able to be told like, hey, like, maybe you could go about this slightly differently. And, like if you try and push against a really heavy door and it's locked, you're never going to get anywhere. But if you just take the 2 seconds to unlock the door and then open it, it's going to be super easy. Or, like the world works with like, you can put levers and hinges and these certain places where like if you just attached a hinge right here, it would be, it would make the door swing open so much easier. And
having a coach kind of help you see that's important because as an athlete, we think progress is linear. It's not. It's not like we think this is how we're just going to go just in a straight upward trend all the time. We're always going to get better. No, it's like a squiggly line. It's all over the place. We're going backwards. We're going forwards, in all different manners. Having a coach to kind of help you feel like you're going linear is really, really important because as an athlete, we just think, oh, I'm putting in the work. Why did I not see X amount of gains this amount of time? Well, the better and better you get, the harder it is to see those incremental gains. I come from, a background of weightlifting where, that first year when you're weightlifting, you put 10, 20 kilos on all of your lifts. Well, when you're down 5 years down the line, you're happy if after, 8-week training cycle, you put on half a kilo or, you're down 2 kilos because you're overtrained. So you learn, and having a coach kind of helps you navigate. And like you said, they can help with all of these negative thought patterns you had. So, well, hey, the body should be stressed right now. We just crushed it in this workout. You're not going to be at your best. We're going to peak you for this event that's in 2 weeks. So a coach can also keep you in the mental mind frame saying, hey, we've done everything that we need to do. We've done all the work. Now you just have to go out there on that particular day and do what you do best. So again, that's why it's important to really have a coach if you want to, do anything, in my opinion, kind of significant, because we're always going to get in our own way.
Totally. We always get in our own way. Like that's just kind of like, the brain wants to trend towards pleasure and away from pain. Mm-hmm. And, it's that whole thing of like, oh, I got validated there before, so I'm going to keep pressing that button. It's like the rat that like is searching for sugar or whatever, it's like, oh, I can get more if I just keep pressing this button, but then, like it'll end up taxing the system, and it ends up destroying what is true. Like, you need sugar because you need glucose because like the physiologically, you need glycogen in your muscles and everything. But if you have too much of it, you're going to have oxidative stress. And so,
oh yeah. Well, I always use the example of, I work with kids, but so it's not the most appropriate example, but look at alcohol. The first time you get drunk, you have one beer and you're like, oh, that was all it took. The next couple of times, like, it takes 2, it takes 3. And every time it takes a little bit more to get that same feeling. The problem is we're always kind of chasing that feeling, right? And there's going to be different ways to go about doing it. Then, once beer doesn't work anymore, you switch to hard alcohol. So there's always going to be that you need to have more, and it's not necessarily the best way to go about it.
Yeah, totally. I think,
coming from a powerlifting background too, is you chase numbers. Like for the longest time, I wanted to squat 500 pounds. Why? Because it was cool. However, I never got there. But at the point, like at some point, you're just chasing a number, and you're putting so much stress on your body that it's like, this isn't even fun anymore, and you're doing more harm than you are good. So, yeah, it's a tricky game of chasing numbers. Don't do that.
Yeah, totally. Chasing numbers. It all comes down to that idea of external validation and wanting other people to think that you're cool instead of, chasing the idea of like, I want to do this because it's going to feel good. And, what's crazy is like, you can anchor that same goal to two different ideals. And depending on how you anchor that ideal is going to be how you actually pursue it. And then, in the act of pursuing it, whether you accomplish it or not, and for me, I know for the longest time, I just wanted other people to see that I was the best. Like when I really did well in ski racing was when I didn't care how I did. I just went out and I had fun.
Yep.
And
when you talk to some of the best athletes, they don't even, if they're not having fun, they don't perform at their best.
Yeah.
So, as a coach on game day, what do? You just go out there and give your athlete a whole bunch of technical jargon that they need to keep working on. It's like, hey man, you've done this a million times. Go out there and have fun. Like on, game days, that's the most nervous day for me because I have absolutely no control over the outcome. It's all my athlete. And on that day, it's only keeping them in the right state of mind so that they can do the thing that they've done for so long, get them out of their own way and let them go and play. That's really what it comes down to, and that's why they do it. But most of the good athletes don't really need that. Every once in a while they do, but it's just a reminder of, hey, you've put in the work. Just turn your brain off. And I've coached a lot of weightlifting competitions, and it's the most nervous when they go out there for that first snatch because they're going to touch the bar. So the only advice I give them here, I want you to go out there. I want you to grab the bar. I want you to feel it, and when you're ready, go. Don't think. Thinking takes way too long, especially in your sport. If you think, shit, you're dead. That's just the way it is. Thinking takes too long. Your body feels faster and knows what it needs to do faster than you can ever think about it.
Yeah, definitely. Like when you are training and conditioning yourself, you're establishing those neural pathways. But when you're trying to control the neural firing of it, you actually significantly, and I don't know any scientific studies, but just intrinsically, I know this, that like if you try and control those neural pathways, instead of firing basically on an instantaneous level where like there literally is barely any time elapsed between the input and the output, when you try and control it, you exponentially increase that the neural firing time. And
it becomes a reflex loop. So the first time you learn something, it's up here. It's unconscious incompetence. You don't know you're doing it wrong. And then you move to this state of conscious incompetence where you're doing it wrong. Then you move to this, conscious competence. Then it's this unconscious competence where you don't even know you're doing it and you're doing the skill. And the skiing especially, you have so much feedback that if that input from your bottom of your foot that you need to know about the tuition or the conditions of the snow has to take all the time to go all the way up to your brain for your brain to make a decision and send it all the way back out, that's too long. So what happens is these trained reflexes, it doesn't even make it all the way up to your brain. It goes right up to your stem, down in your spine, and then a response gets shot right back out to your foot, and that increases the speed, like you said, exponentially. But these are learned things, these pathways. The best way people describe it is, carving a path through a field, a grass field, right? The first time you do it, there's no path. You have to it's slow. It takes time. The second time you do it, you can kind of see where you went. The grass is stomped down a little bit. And the more you do it, it becomes like almost there's a paved road there. And bam, you can fly through that as quick as you can without any effort. And what's nice about that is now when you have this nice paved road, that neural network, it's so much less mental capacity. Now you can think about other things. You have more space to think about the next level. When skiing, it's like, first I have to learn how to ski. And once you feel confident skiing, it's like, all right, now that I know how to ski, I can focus on hitting that jump. Okay, and now I can focus on when I'm in the air doing all these spins. And the more practice you do, the faster you get at these things.
Totally. Yeah, definitely. And like an analogy that came to mind is like flying through a field on a bike. And if you have, you know, a bunch of tall grass there, you're not going to know if you're going to hit a rock, you know, you're not going to, and
exactly.
like you might get tossed off your bike and like, okay, like got to get up, and then you might move
might be
that
a cliff
rock,
at the end of it. Yeah.
right. And then, you know, the next time it is, you know, more padded down, and like you might be able to see like this, you know, the rock better next time, where you moved it. And then, you know, like eventually, like as that path gets more manicured, you also can go in and like see the obstacle and then consciously remove it, and you know, not be tossed off, or use that obstacle to do a little trick, or you know,
exactly.
whatever it is.
And you know, the 100th time you're doing a blindfold purely off of feel, because you just know it so well and you own it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, one of the things that David Wise does for visualization is he has blacked out goggles, and then he'll, you know, so that way he can keep his eyes open, but he'll, you know, put this mental representation of like, you know, setting the trick, visualizing it, getting the grab, and then he'll even go in and visualize setting it slightly off, and what the recovery that he needs to have in the air to correct it, and, you know, like get those neural pathways firing. And what's really cool about the brain, as you know, very well know, is that when you're visualizing,
it doesn't know the difference between when you're visualizing and when you're actually doing it.
Exactly.
Yep. The brain, and that's why I tell people visualization is so important, because especially with the extreme sports, I can go out and I can actually physically do this 100 times and break myself, or I can have this mental practice of doing it hundreds of times over and over again, and I can practice what happened. What do I do if this goes wrong in my mind, and I can make that happen. It's interesting. You talked with I listened to your podcast with Mike Wilson, and he does a lot of that, but he does it lucid dreaming. So he can experience tricks that he hasn't done before, and he sees himself doing it, you know, as he's lucid dreaming in a calm state. And, you know, the brain's able to mess kind of in a hokey pokey and into that. But the more you can do that, and the more experience you have with that, the more likely you're going to be successful when that actually needs to happen, because you've done it over and over again. Those nerves, you know, when you're doing these visualization exercises, they've actually, you know, put, you know, electrodes up to your brain and send the exact same parts of your brain that will activate that particular muscle group are actually firing and lighting up like that event is actually happening.
Yep. Yeah, totally. And, you know, then also like the more likely that you're going to not revert into a fight or flight state of mind, thinking that, you know, you like if something goes wrong, like, you know, it could go seriously.
What do I do? Yeah, it's experience. You've been there before without actually having to be there, which is, I don't know. Yeah, visualization is really good. And as a kid, I did this too. My dad had me, you know, when I played baseball, he's like, I want you to imagine, you know, next time where you're going to hit the ball, you know, and really just focus on that. And, you know, it actually happened one time where I hit it exactly where I imagined. I was just like, whoa, light bulb. Like, why aren't more people doing this?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. As far as like skiing goes, what have been some of the most powerful like things that you have witnessed or seen that you've been able to transfer from other sports into like these younger athletes? And, you know, what has been the most beneficial things that you've been able to push or convey to these athletes? And also, is there a side question, is there a communication barrier, and how do you work around that?
Yes, there's a huge communication barrier. However, these kids speak movement really, really well. Everybody speaks movement really, really well. The one thing that I will say that I've learned from these athletes, because, you know, in China from a young age, they do trampoline, you know, for air. So these kids are so good in the air. However, they didn't have, you know, the best trampoline coach. And if you can talk to Mike about this again too, they have really, really bad habits. So we're going back to the basics and reteaching these little things, because what happens is when you start getting to, you know, things like double corks, is if you're setting that first one just a little bit off, your second one's going to be totally way off, and your chance of landing, it just goes up higher. So we're going back and really focusing on the basics. And now Imagine trying to teach a double cork on a trampoline to a person who doesn't speak the same language as you.
Yeah.
It's incredibly difficult, especially like as a coach. I don't know anything about trampolines. Mike has been out of the game for 7 years when he came back and finally started doing this. He's not about to hop on a trampoline and start showing double corks. So you have to find some way to communicate with them, and usually it's by showing. And they understand movement so well. So I always joke with everybody that I am a charades champion. Like that's really. If there was a championship for charades, I would probably enter, and I would probably do pretty well. But with anything, I think when you coach with these kids, when you coach with passion, you coach with intent, you show them what you want to do, they understand that. And they understand that, hey, this guy is working hard to really try. And, he doesn't understand. We can't really understand what each other is saying yet. They're getting better. But he's coming with passion. He's coming with intensity. And we're there for an hour working on, just how do we communicate? And it's drawing pictures. I have whiteboards. I write stuff on whiteboards. We have a translator, but the translator is also sometimes lazy and doesn't quite, I say something and I look over at him and he's kind of looking off in my land. I was like, no, I wanted you to say that to them. If they don't do this, they're going to fall on their head. So the humor, however, they speak movement really, really well. And these kids, because they've been in the air for so long, they learn so fast. It's been so cool this 4 months seeing, the progression from where they were at Mount Hood to, competing in junior worlds just this past month. But the communication is definitely tough. But now in seeing them, they have started to trust us even more because they say, hey, the things that you've been saying to do all the time, okay, we finally started doing them. We're seeing results. So it just really come down to being consistent more than anything and having fun. I'd say the one thing you said, what have you tried to convey to these kids is have fun. Like, these kids are 14 years old. If I give them all these boring things to do, they're not going to do it, and they're going to hate me. And in the world of skiing, like, you have to do fun things. Like, what kids do for fun? They go skiing. Like, they don't go to the gym and lift weights. How do you get them to do things that are fun and make things fun? So we usually play a lot of games before that, don't involve a lot of instruction. It's usually just mostly visual stuff. I have an app on my phone that's, a translate app. But in the past couple of months, they've been getting a lot better. There's like one kid that's kind of like the leader who doesn't necessarily speak English, but he understands what I say and kind of can convey the message to the rest of the kid. And where we're at now is they've really kind of bought in. So now they're all paying attention. They see where they've came, where they were, and how far they've come. So they're kind of a little bit more bought into the process now.
Yeah.
Which is important. I mean, if we all have the same goal, hey, we want to win a gold medal. Right. And if we all don't share that same goal, and it's true, some of these kids, this is their ticket to a better life because they come from poor families. So they're just here because this got them out of where they were. But getting everybody to understand, hey, this is our goal and this is why we're doing what we're doing was really the biggest thing. Most important, like you said, that's what helps teams. Everybody's got to know why they're there. We have athletes that have been to the Olympics, and we have athletes that we just tested and we like their ability, and so they're here. They don't even really know how to ski. We have a B team that we have, but everybody's here for kind of a reason, and everybody understands that, which is hard to communicate. It's funny because you'll laugh, but at the end of the day, one of our athletes comes down the mountain and goes over to our medical staff, holding her back and just looking weird. And I'm so good at reading body language now, communicating without communicating. And I'm like, oh, she's fine. She just needs to go to the bathroom. Yeah, it turns out she's feeling a little constipated. I was like, it's unbelievable when you spend enough time with people. Body languages, especially when you don't speak the same languages, it tells everything, really.
Totally. And what's crazy is only 7% of communication is done via words, and then 43% is done, via tonality, and then the rest is via body language. So really, at the end of the day, most of our communication is done via body language. And that's one of the things that has really destroyed our communication and our community and our connections with social media, is that everyone's out there trolling everyone over the internet, thinking that they know what someone else is talking about. And one of the things that I think is really, really, really important at the end of the day is asking more questions. And that, where this is a side tangent, but being able to ask more questions in society, being able to explore other people's points of view. And that's why instead of making an assumption, like you see this kid training really, really hard and you think that he just wants to be the best in the world because of an egotistical thing. And then you boil it down to that emotion that you're talking about. And it's like, he's training really, really, really hard because he is, he came from a poor family and he wants to not only bring himself out, but he wants to get his parents out and he wants to lift his community up. And so he's pinned this giant why onto that. And you think that he's training for himself, but really he's training for a whole community or whole city or whatever. And then all of a sudden, like, that understanding can transcend way past this egotistical idea of like, oh, he's just doing this for himself. It's like, I think being able to ask questions and being able to, interpret what you intrinsically, intuitively know via body language is very important. But, not letting, because like a lot of that, you're talking about going and training with other athletes that are older than you. And a lot of what we do like we're just, exactly. That mimicry. Mm-hmm. And so,
I don't have kids, but I've worked a lot with younger kids, and I was a camp counselor for a really long time. And when the first thing that you see is all of a sudden a kid falls, what do? The kid is looking at me to see how I react. If I freak out and go, "Oh my God, oh no, are you okay?" The kid's gonna be like, "Oh my God, something's wrong."
Yeah.
Oh, but if I'm like, "Oh, you're fine, you just fell," the kid's like, "Oh, you know what? I'm fine," because they don't have the experience of falling or how to interpret that yet. They are completely dictating all of my actions and my body language and reading that. Even if it's a kid's a toddler, he doesn't speak yet. That's how they interpret. They see body language, and so that's how a lot of this is working with our kids. And they look at me and they, "Did I do something right?" And you're like, "Yeah, that's great," or "No, that's not great." That's how and boo how. Those are how I get by. How is good, boo how is not good. That's literally how we teach our kids. And like they said, they need that feedback, whether it's just from my body language or it's from my words. Well, my words don't mean much because we don't speak the same language. So it's got to be by body language and emotion.
Yeah. And even on a physiological level, like when you have a cortisol response, a stress response, other people around you will have a stress response because hormonally, we have like the pheromone transfer in intimate relationship. And then we also have like the hormonal transfer in conversation. And like, that's where, I get really pissed off watching the news a lot of the times in the US because it's literally this bad thing happened, this bad thing happened, this bad thing happened, and everyone's irritated.
It's everywhere. We're primed to be, in that negative state, in that fight or flight state. We need to get, like I said, people need to relax more. They need to go outside. They need to meditate. They need to breathe. Well, we talked about breathing again, but people don't realize, what's exercise? Breathing. You're getting your heart rate up. You're stressing your system. What do you need to do? Breathe. And so people are like, "Oh, meditation's hokey pokey." It's like, meditation's important because all it is focusing on the one important thing that keeps you alive: breathing. Yeah, that's it.
And you mentioned yoga. They call it Kundalini, which is life source. Mm-hmm. And it's, it's super important to be able to be in touch with the life source, which is this intangible object that, like it's tangible in the fact that like what's really cool is when you do get into the extreme sports and you're flying through the air, wind will move you and it actually becomes a tangible thing. And, like I've done some speed flying as well and, some of the air sports and like, it's a real thing, like.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And go for it.
No, go for it. I'm learning more and more about these sports every day, which it's cool. It's been a cool internship or apprenticeship into the extreme sports world for sure. And it's totally different because we've mentioned flow states a lot today on here, and that's really what it is can you get into that flow state where you're just completely in touch with yourself where absolutely nothing else matters. You're not thinking about anything. Time is completely slowed and you have complete control. I personally love those flow states, but extreme sports athletes have to be able to get there.
Live and die by the flow state.
They live and die by the flow state. It's pretty incredible. They're chasing it all the time.
Yeah, definitely. I know you probably have to start trending towards getting
Yeah,
ready.
I gotta put the snow pants on and head to the mountain. But I will be in Colorado in November for the World Cup, so we'll have to link up and do this again.
Totally. Can I ask you just like 3 more questions, rapid fire, real quick?
Yeah, let's do it. Rapid fire.
Cool. So, what's one piece of encouragement or wisdom that you've received that stuck with you?
One piece, just number one. I've said it a bunch of days. Just have fun. If you're not having fun, it's not really worth doing. It doesn't matter what it is. You could love knitting. That's fine. Just have fun doing knitting, whatever it is.
Totally. If you could have one significant impact in the world, what would it be?
I hope just kind of lead by example and inspire people to live life to their fullest. Whatever that means to you, I want you. If I inspired you to do that, then hell yeah, then go out there and inspire someone else. That's what the world needs more of: is people inspiring other people to live their superpower.
Totally. And what's the best place to find you?
You can find me on Instagram, just like you found me, Strength Coach K.
Sweet. Totally. I'll put that in the show notes. And yeah, buddy, thank you so much for your time. Definitely get in touch with me when you're out here, and we'll connect. And I think we'll chop up some more like morning, evening routines, nutrition sort of stuff.
Definitely.
And
I'd be happy to do it.
Enjoy. And dude, honestly, this conversation was incredible. Like lots of resonance. I feel like we're homies, even though we're across the world. So
absolutely.
Soul brothers.
A lot of fun. Soul brothers. All right, man.
Sweet.
Take it.
Much love.
Well, there you have it, guys. Welcome back to the Athletic Stance podcast. Thank you so much for bearing with me while I got these episodes out. I really hope you enjoyed episode 1 of season 2. Stay tuned for an array of new guests. Eventually, towards the end of the ski season, we'll be branching out into some other athletes across the board that I have been blessed to connect with. And as always, I love your feedback. Would love to hear a message through Instagram at the Athletic Stance Podcast or at Scott J. Chrisman, or on Facebook, or an email, scott@theathleticstance.com. Much love, everyone. If you enjoyed, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, rate and review, and as always, have fun out there. We'll see you next episode.